Authorities block access to Panama's National Assembly as protests are set to continue. Indigenous people from across the globe are meeting in Venezuela. And the Indian-administered territory of Jammu and Kashmir has been officially absorbed into India. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. More protests are set to take place in Panama City, Panama, one day after police heavily repressed mobilizations against a proposed reform package. Authorities have set up a fence around the National Assembly building in the hopes of stopping protesters from reaching the building. People have been demonstrating against a constitutional reform package that, among others, includes amendments to alter the state budget, adjust salaries, and would remove autonomy from universities to oversee higher education. The National Assembly is set to debate the reform package and could vote on it before going on a break until 2020.
They can't block this area. They are so proud to proclaim that the assembly is the home of the people, but they don't even let us protest. Look at how well guarded the building is, with so many police and even guard dogs. And yet they say that's the home of the people.
They should allow us to go in there, to listen to their debate and everything that this reform implies. But they want to do everything behind our backs, and that's very upsetting.
Our correspondent in Panama City, Hugo Bera, has more.
I
am outside the National Assembly where confrontations took place yesterday between police and demonstrators. The area surrounding the National Assembly has been blocked off with a fence that was put up by the National Police. At the moment, the situation is calm, but more demonstrations are planned for today. Nonetheless, the Assembly will hold a session today as it's one of the last days that they are able to meet to discuss the reforms before going on a break until 2020. If these reforms are to be approved, they will be put into a referendum early next year. On Wednesday, the protest against the reforms faced heavy repression by the police as they used rubber bullets, firearms, and tear gas against citizens, detaining 30 people who have yet to be freed. And now we can see this fence has been put up in order to prevent any more mobilizations.
That was our correspondent Hugo Bera with that report. In Chile, a protest march is approaching the capital Santiago from Valparaiso as opposition parties meet the government for a second time. On Wednesday, the popular uprising won a substantial victory. President Sebastián Piñera was forced to cancel the APEC and COP25 summits scheduled for November and December. Alejandro Kirk reports.
It takes a special facial expression to hide such a big defeat as this one.
As president of all Chileans, I always have to put the problems of the Chilean people, their needs and hopes first. Our government, with deep regret and pain, because it is painful for Chile, has decided not to host the APEC summit, scheduled for November, nor the COP summit, which has due to take place in December.
APEC member countries and the United Nations had realized the obvious. Piñera, refusing to see the reality around him, found himself in a cul-de-sac.
I think this is a clear sign that Chile is a house with a pretty exterior, but which has deep structural cracks. And when your home has such big cracks, you can't receive visitors. They cannot keep on pretending that Chile is some kind of model that is leading the way. Chile today isn't leading anything. What Chile needs to do is show what is happening, ask forgiveness from its people, and repair everything that's been done wrong in recent decades.
Here the people are giving the experts a lesson.
There is an interesting dichotomy here. The famous experts who make up an industry to protect the wealthy got their diagnosis completely wrong. They didn't see what was coming. And now you hear this phrase all the time from panelists on the TV, controlled by the powerful economic interest. But the real experts are those who have shared the dreadful living conditions imposed by the Chilean model.
The debate on who started the violence was answered on Wednesday when a huge procession with no police present reached the Moneda Palace in total peace. As teachers performed a children's dance in the street, the militarized police seized the moment to attack.
The violence was started by the state apparatus, and the main responsibility lies with Sebastián Piñera. He went on television flanked by military officers who are supposed to be the people in uniform, not the servants of the bankers of the rich, of right-wing governments like his, and told the country that we are at war.
The legal aid team at the University of Chile continued to record human rights abuses in the hundreds.
Up until Tuesday afternoon, the Ombudsman had received 752 complaints of abuse.
What we can say so far is that there is a pattern of systematic abuse, not isolated cases, which are carried out in different parts of the city by different actors, whether or not there is a demonstration and whether or not there has been violence. And these acts of abuse include torture and persecution of the most vulnerable groups.
We have received 35 formal reports of sexual abuse, and there are certain acts which have been repeated continuously. This includes solitary confinement and arrests that are not reported by the police, by plainclothes officers using unofficial cars.
The surgical precision of the security forces enabled them to hit an observer from the National Human Rights Institute, identified in bright yellow with 7 pellets. When asked why they do this, they say they're just doing their job.
In other news, the oil spill that is ravaging Brazil's coastline is taking a toll on the country's fishing industry. Fishermen in the port city of Recife said they have been struggling to sell their fish due to concerns about possible contamination since the oil spills reached the coast in the first week of September. The fishermen's woes worsened on Tuesday when the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries said it would impose a ban on fishing in the affected areas during the months of November and December.
People are not going at sea because it's a waste. You send the boat and you have that cost, so you have to get a return. You come back from the sea with a product and nobody wants to buy it because they say it's contaminated.
Candles were lit in cities across Colombia in protest against the murders of members of indigenous communities in the country. Demonstrators in the capital, Bogotá, called for an end to the genocide of indigenous people and implored President Iván Duque to take action to prevent more killings. The event took place after 8 indigenous people were killed on Tuesday, October 29th. At least 125 members of indigenous communities have been killed since Duque took office. The Colombian National Indigenous Association denounced the president for failing to implement the country's 2016 peace agreements. The association also called for the Inter-American Human Rights Commission to visit the Cauca department, one of the regions most affected by violence against indigenous, social and political leaders. Now, the Colombian National Indigenous Organization released a communique denouncing the recent massacre. Indigenous organizations say that state security forces in territories where drug traffickers and paramilitary forces are active show no willingness to guarantee peace. The social and political problems faced by indigenous people are often aggravated by neoliberal governments. This was the complaint made by participants at an indigenous summit underway in Venezuela, bringing together people from all of Latin America. We have more in this report.
Territorial and environmental struggles, a lack of political rights, poverty, exclusion, racism, and discrimination make up the bulk of issues that indigenous people face in most of Latin America.
Extractivism and encroaching by transnational companies into our lands is the ongoing conflict we face. Half of Mexico's territory has been given over to these companies.
From the moment a racist political system is installed with the support of the United States, our identity is immediately in danger. They take away our right to land, to organize, to self-govern.
Experiences are shared between many peoples, from struggles happening in Ecuador to ancestral Mayan lands, experiences of Mapuche resistance, or of constitutional recognition like in Bolivia and Venezuela.
Governments can change, but if there is no revolutionary transformation, like here in Venezuela, then the rich, the big companies, even the government, they can't implement social change. As long as the same rotten people are in power, they will only enrich themselves at our expense.
They say that neoliberal and conservative governments only increase the people's needs.
This Congress is very essential for us, especially the young generation of today, in realizing the importance of preserving cultural values towards the environment and freedom from emancipation, freedom from imperialists and capitalists.
It's very clear that our main adversary is capitalism. As such, many peoples and nationalities are fighting for their collective rights. What's most important is maintaining unity and to remain active to achieve our goals.
Over 20 delegations from Latin America and the world are taking part in this meeting to create a platform for joint coordination and to unite their various struggles.
Coming up, the Nevis Premier has criticized some countries' refusal to respect Venezuela's sovereignty. Don't touch that remote.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis of the socio-economic and political life of the whole South America on our screen and platform in English. A critical place committed to the truth to determine the major events that transformed the world today. On Monday, only on Venezuela.
Welcome back. We return with Caribbean news. Nevis Premier Mark Brantley has slammed the European Union's tax haven blacklist, calling it an attack on the Caribbean nation's independence. The 28-nation EU set up the blacklist in December 2017, which causes reputational damages, stricter controls on transactions with the EU, and poses a risk to trade and investment.
I sound a warning here today that our hard-won independence is being slowly eroded by new and different efforts at colonial domination. The EU and others must understand that Barbados and the Caribbean do not desire confrontation and acrimony. We require genuine partnership and respect. Belgium and Germany cannot assert their sovereign right to tax their citizens at 40%, while denying Barbados its equally sovereign right to tax its citizens at 10%. It is not enough for powerful nations to say to small nations that our tax policies are harmful to them without showing us how such harm occurs.
Speaking at the ruling Barbados Labour Party annual conference, the Premier also spoke about the illegal sanctions imposed against Venezuela as he called on international countries to respect the Bolivarian Republic's sovereignty.
We have no doubt where our dear friends, the United States and others stand on this issue impacting Venezuela. But the CARICOM position, and listen to me carefully, the CARICOM position, championed as it was by Barbados and Mia Mottley, is a position of principle. Venezuela is a sovereign state, and its people and institutions must be allowed to fashion the best solutions for their country peacefully and through dialogue.
Bahamas is to introduce a new tax relief policy for Abaco, the Keys and Grand Bahama until June 2020. The measure is designed to stimulate the economies of those communities most impacted by Hurricane Dorian. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis has announced that individuals and businesses in these areas will be exempt from paying VAT on a range of items, from water and unprepared foods to clothing and plumbing fixtures. Fuel for generators in communities still without electricity will also be VAT-free. The start date will be announced shortly. There are also plans to set up a National Recovery and Reconstruction Trust Fund, an independent, non-political body to help fund home and building repairs. Over the next 2 months, Grenada will be working with Jamaica's Tourism Ministry to enhance visitor experience at visitor attractions on the Spice Isle. Tourism is Grenada's main source of foreign exchange, and last year the sector contributed to more than half of the island's GDP. In 2017, the country saw a 30% increase in visitor arrivals, while it won the title of Best Caribbean Destination from the Caribbean Travel Journal. Grenada's government is striving to provide a top-notch tourism product, and to achieve this outcome, who else would the Spice Isle turn to but the Caribbean's #1 tourism destination, Jamaica?
Either a PPP, a public-private partnership, so that means a private investor with, and when I say investor, I'm not talking necessarily of somebody from outside. I think Grenadians can do that easily, can work with government to do something, but it seems as though the private sector does it better, and all of the sites in Jamaica are commercialized. And maybe that's part of the reason they do so very well and they get exceeding numbers. So there's a commitment from the Ministry of Tourism to work with us, and we'll seriously be pursuing some of the ideas that they have, some of the things that have worked with them to make our tourism more resilient, more vibrant.
St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chastanet has said his administration has made little headway in dealing with the buggery law. Chastanet said he acknowledged that the matter has become a global issue, especially as it relates to human rights violations against the minority group. However, he explained that his government has not taken an official position on the subject, adding that he did not believe tourism would be affected. This, as earlier this month, the president of the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association said she was saddened over so many LGBTQ travelers refusing to visit St. Lucia because of the ancient law.
By the shackles.
The Caribbean Policy Research Institute, or CAPRI, says Jamaica's anti-gay laws cost the country around $11 billion annually. CAPRI's co-executive director says these discriminatory practices make the LGBTQ community 3 times more vulnerable to mental health issues.
The incidence of mental health in the general population is around 21%. The incidence of mental health in the LGBT community is 69%. It is more than triple the rate in the general population. That arithmetic tells you that more than half of the mental health issues amongst LGBT people is due solely to our discrimination. Treating mental health costs Jamaica about $5 billion each year, only a third of which is the public cost. The rest is a private cost.
South Sudan's former vice president turned rebel leader Riek Machar has called for a 6-month delay in the formation of a unity government. Machar said he will not take part in any unity administration until the government, led by President Salva Kiir, implements demands by opposition leaders, including the integration of rebel forces and government forces. Machar accused Kiir of lacking political will to implement the peace deal. The two foes had agreed to form a unity government on November 12th in an attempt to end a 6-year conflict that has killed almost 500,000 people. The United Nations Security Council has voted to extend the UN mission in Western Sahara for another 12 months. 13 members of the Security Council voted in favor of the motion, while Russia and South Africa abstained. The resolution seeks to extend the mandate of the mission that was established in 1991 to supervise the holding of a referendum in which people in the disputed territory would choose between independence and integration into Morocco. Western Sahara has been contested since 1975, while Morocco and the Polisario independence movement fought a war over the territory until a 1991 UN-brokered ceasefire.
We welcome the calls, repeated calls by the Secretary General and by the Security Council for both parties, the Frente Polisario and Morocco, to engage in serious and constructive negotiations. We do welcome that, and we have seriously and constructively engaged in negotiations sponsored by the United Nations, but it is the other party, Morocco, which illegally occupies parts of our territory, that has always opposed to entering in direct negotiations with us.
When we come back, unfortunate news from Pakistan that 65 people died in a train fire. Details after this.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Pleasure documentaries. Sundays. Only on Pleasure. Welcome back. Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir have been officially split into two federal territories within India. Soon after midnight, the federal government's orders went into effect, dividing up the old state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories, one Jammu and Kashmir, and the other the high-altitude region of Ladakh. Both regions are now directly ruled by Delhi, as their new lieutenant governors were sworn in at a high-security ceremony on Thursday. Major cities in the region were nearly deserted on Thursday, as shops and businesses remained closed in rejection to the new status. A fire on a Pakistani train has killed at least 65 people and injured nearly 40 after a gas canister passengers were using to cook breakfast exploded. 9 victims, some seriously injured, were hospitalized. Meanwhile, 3 of the train's carriages were destroyed. Authorities say the train was on its way from the southern city of Karachi to Rawalpindi, near the capital, with many people going to a religious conference. Several survivors believe the incident was caused by a short circuit in the train's electrical system.
62 passengers have been murdered and 35 others were injured after 2 cylinders on one stop burst. Initially, 13 people died, but 49 dead bodies were recovered later when the coaches were cooled down and fire was extinguished.
A network of rights defenders and medics have taken on the dangerous job of counting the dead as bloody anti-government protests continue in Iraq. The Iraqi Human Rights Commission places the number at more than 40, while the government has stopped releasing figures on the number of protest-related deaths since the strike started on October 1st. Still, protests swell, and the Iraqi Prime Minister's faith remains in limbo as demonstrators call for his resignation and a regime change.
We are an oppressed people and we are tired of the entire situation. We don't want this rule. For 16 years they've been torturing us and killing us. No rights or capabilities. The country is going from bad to worse. Our rights and our children's rights are lost. What are we supposed to do? We're sick of it. Our issue is not with Adil Abdul Mahdi or someone else. Our issue is with all of them. We want to weed them out, and we don't want any of them.
We want total change of government. We don't want the firing of one or two officials and replacing them with another corrupt one. We want the government to be approved totally. They think that we will protest for 1 or 2 days and then go home. No, we are staying here until the government is totally approved.
Hundreds of students have erected camps on University Plaza in Barcelona, blocking adjoining streets as they continue their call for Catalan independence. The students began their strike on Wednesday morning and remained overnight as they plan to occupy the area indefinitely. As morning broke, they marched through the streets to Sant Jaume Square outside the regional government headquarters. The students say they've been forced to strike since the Spanish government has refused to sit and talk with Catalan leaders. The sentencing of 9 separatist leaders to a combined total of 100 years has sparked protests since earlier this month.
We want independence because the situation has gotten to the point where they don't want to talk and find a solution to the problem. There is no more talking to do, and the only way is to form our own country and start from the beginning where we can all participate and all give our opinion.
The U.S. House of Representatives voted 232 to 196 to pass a resolution to lay out the ground rules for the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump. Its focus is on a more public phase rather than on deciding whether to impeach the president or not. It also sets out the rights Trump's lawyers would have. This is the first formal test of support for the inquiry into the Democratic-controlled House. The president, who calls the inquiry a witch hunt, is accused of trying to use Ukraine to investigate corruption claims against his political rival Joe Biden and his son. That brings us to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Stars at channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Discover the cultural diversity that defines a continent. The place where art and tradition are part of the same nucleus. Artistic explorations,